What if I told you that one of the world's most important internet choke points sits directly inside one of the most dangerous geopolitical flashpoints on Earth? And what if the next battle in the Middle East was not about oil, but about data? Because beneath the waters of the Strait of Hormuz lies a hidden network that helps connect the Gulf to the global economy. Most people don't know it exists. Most investors never think about it. And yet, if tensions between Iran and the West continue to escalate, these underwater cables could become one of the most important strategic assets in the world. Today, we are going to explore a question almost nobody is asking. Could Iran eventually gain influence over the digital infrastructure that powers the Gulf economy? And if it can, what does that mean for the future of artificial intelligence, data centers, global investment, and the balance of power in the Middle East? Let's dive in. When people hear the word Strait of Hormuz, they think of oil, and for good reason. The strait is one of the most important energy choke points on Earth. Every day, enormous volumes of oil and liquefied natural gas pass through this narrow stretch of water between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. Whenever tensions rise in the region, energy markets pay attention, because everyone knows that if Hormuz closes, oil prices could explode. But here's the thing. There's another critical infrastructure network running through the region that receives almost no attention: subsea internet cables. These cables lie quietly on the seabed. They don't make headlines. You can't see them. Most people don't even know they're there. Yet they help connect businesses, governments, financial institutions, cloud providers, and consumers across the Gulf. Without them, modern digital economies simply don't function, and that raises an important question. What happens when critical digital infrastructure intersects with geopolitical conflict? Section 1. The real threat. Recently, some reports in Iranian media suggested that Iran could potentially seize control of subsea cables. That sounds dramatic, but in reality, it's highly unlikely. Submarine cables are not like ships. You can't simply board them and take control. Many stretch hundreds or even thousands of kilometers across the seabed. Iran does not possess the specialized capabilities needed to physically control these systems. Nor is there evidence that Tehran is actively attempting to intercept the data flowing through them. So, if cable seizure isn't the real threat, what is? The answer is much more subtle. Access. The biggest danger today isn't that cables get taken over, it's that nobody can repair them. And that's a much bigger problem than it sounds. Section 2. The problem nobody talks about. Think about what happens when a road develops potholes. At first, it isn't a major issue, but if repair crews can't reach the road, eventually traffic slows, then congestion builds, then sections become unusable. Subsea cables work in a similar way. These systems require regular maintenance. Sometimes they need repairs, sometimes they need upgrades, and specialized ships are required to do that work. The problem? Those ships need safe access to the region. As conflict has intensified around the Strait of Hormuz, insurers have become increasingly cautious. Ship operators face greater risks, crews become harder to recruit, and companies become reluctant to send expensive assets into potential conflict zones. As a result, some cable projects have already been delayed or suspended. Even if a ceasefire holds, another challenge remains. Mines, unexploded ordnance, military debris. Conflict leaves scars beneath the surface that can remain dangerous long after the shooting stops. This means the threat to Gulf telecommunications infrastructure could outlast the conflict itself. But that's only the beginning, because there's an even more important issue lurking beneath the surface. Section 3. The precedent. Let's imagine a future scenario. Not necessarily the most likely scenario, but a plausible one. Imagine that Iran eventually succeeds in extracting some form of payment from commercial shipping transiting the strait. Perhaps it's negotiated, perhaps it's informal, perhaps it's justified as security costs. However it happens, a precedent gets established, and that precedent matters enormously. Because once the world accepts the principle that passage through Hormuz can be monetized, the question becomes, why stop with oil tankers? Why not charge cable ships? Why not charge repair vessels? Why not charge operators maintaining digital infrastructure? Why not charge future offshore projects? This is where the discussion becomes much bigger than telecommunications, because the issue isn't really about cables, it's about power, who controls access, who sets the rules,
That once
and
governments
discover new revenue streams, they rarely give them up voluntarily. Section 4. Could Iran damage the cables? Now let's address another uncomfortable question. Could Iran physically damage these cables? The answer is yes, at least in theory. Many Gulf waters are relatively shallow, and shallow water cables are inherently more vulnerable than cables located thousands of meters beneath the ocean surface. Most are reinforced, most are protected, but they're not invincible. In fact, we have already seen how vulnerable subsea infrastructure can be. In 2024, several Red Sea cables were damaged after a vessel dragged its anchor across the seabed. The disruption wasn't even intentional, yet the impact was significant. This demonstrates an important reality. You don't necessarily need sophisticated technology to damage subsea infrastructure. Sometimes simple methods can be surprisingly effective, but here's the key point. Capability and willingness are two different things. Iran may possess the capability, but using it would carry enormous risks. The Gulf is one of the most heavily monitored maritime environments on Earth. American surveillance assets, regional military forces, international naval patrols, commercial monitoring systems. Any deliberate attack would be difficult to hide, and the political consequences could be severe. That's why large-scale cable attacks remain unlikely. The risks may outweigh the benefits. Section 5. Why AI changes everything. Now we arrive at the most important part of this story: artificial intelligence. The Gulf isn't just an energy hub anymore. It wants to become a technology hub. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar. Across the region, governments are investing enormous sums into digital infrastructure, data centers, cloud computing, AI research, advanced manufacturing, digital services. The goal is clear: prepare for a future that depends less on hydrocarbons and more on technology. But every AI strategy has a hidden dependency: connectivity. Massive data centers require reliable internet links. Cloud services require reliable connectivity. Digital economies require reliable connectivity. If investors begin to believe that critical infrastructure could face persistent geopolitical risk, that changes investment decisions. And that's where this story becomes economically important, because data centers can be built elsewhere. Capital can flow elsewhere. Technology companies have options. The Gulf's success depends not only on energy security, it also depends on digital security. So let's return to the original question. Could Iran seize control of the Gulf's internet cables? Probably not. Could it physically damage them? Potentially. Could it create obstacles for maintenance and repairs? Absolutely, but perhaps the most important issue isn't any of those. It's the precedent. Because if the international community accepts the idea that access through the Strait of Hormuz can be monetized, then the implications could extend far beyond oil, far beyond shipping, and far beyond today's conflict. The world is entering an era where data is becoming as strategically important as energy, and the countries that influence the flow of information may ultimately gain leverage that rivals the power once associated exclusively with oil. The next major geopolitical contest in the Gulf may not happen above the water, it may happen beneath it, and almost nobody is paying attention. If you enjoyed this analysis, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments. Do you think data will eventually become more strategically important than oil? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.